Okay, welcome everyone. My name is Nathan Day. I'm one of the guys that works on BTC Map. So this is a place where you can find places to spend your Bitcoin. So just a little bit about BTC Map before we delve into some of the details around how to tag on BTC Map and how to become a shadowy super tagger. So on the mission, we're here to drive merchant adoption, quite obviously. And act as a tool to enable the bootstrapping of circular economy. So that's kind of our core focus. And ultimately, our goal is to become entirely irrelevant. So the point at which you no longer have to use BTC Map to find places to spend sats is when we've won. Because that means that everywhere is accepting Bitcoin and we are hyper-Bitcoinized. So yeah, the end goal for BTC Map is death. So let's just talk a little bit about the problem we were trying to solve. So first off, there was no single place that you could find find places to spend sats. Those that did exist were not great. They were either proprietary or there were lots of shitcoins and other noise around those places as well. And there was a lot of garbage on there in terms of like ATMs and stuff. So ordinarily people want to find merchants, not necessarily ATMs. And part of the reason why there wasn't a good place is that this is hard. So maintaining large data sets, particularly when they're closed data sets, takes an enormous amount of effort to verify and re-verify that the data is accurate and current. So we thought it was about time there was a Bitcoin-only map without any of the additional noise on. Of course, the software is fully open source and free to use by anyone. But the additional thing that we made sure we did is make sure that the data contained in the platform is also open. So all of the merchant information within BTC Maps is based upon OpenStreetMaps, which is a geographic open source open data database. For those not familiar with OpenStreetMaps, it's a bit like Wikipedia, but for maps. So it's a commons, anyone can change the data in there, and that data evolves as people edit that information. And the other thing that we thought was missing was the link to communities as well. So not only in terms of raising up the profile of those communities, but making sure that communities felt empowered and responsible for the maintenance of their own data as well. So we often say it's not our data, it's your data. So if there are problems with data in your part of the world, if the data is perhaps a little bit stale, then that's not our problem. We've provided the tooling to the communities and the most active communities maintain their own data. And that's how we get the scale through the combination of community engagement and open source data. So for those not familiar, this is the map. And we have a variety of web clients. We have the web app, we have a native Android app and also a native iOS app. And so wherever you are in the world, you can very quickly see the places that accept Bitcoin locally to you, and also how they accept Bitcoin. So is it Lightning? We're playing around with Liquid at the moment, so there'll be Liquid tag merchants in the near future. And believe it or not, there are still some places that only take on-chain Bitcoin. So you can do on-chain transactions if you really want to overpay. So just a quick view in terms of the numbers. So this was taken a couple of weeks ago, so we're probably higher than we were back then, but we've got well over 10,000 locations globally. And they're pretty evenly distributed around the planet. So obviously we have hotspots of adoption, but it's really nice to see every morning when I wake up, I see like there's another 50 pins and they're just all over the world. It's really quite a privilege to see that. So as you can see, number go up. We're not talking about exponential growth here, but I'd prefer a slow and steady linear trend line up than some crazy hockey stick. So yeah, that's where we are in terms of merchants. And it's really simple to add a merchant. So there are two ways you can do that. You can just go onto the website and you can enter the details into the form. Also works on mobile through the web app. In the background, what that will do is we'll create a ticket, and then one of the kind of core community members, one of the shadowy super taggers, will pick up that data and they will add that location. Normally within a couple of days, that location has been added to OpenStreetMaps, and then that trickles forward up into BTC Map. So that's the way to do it. If you don't want to get involved in OpenStreetMap, I will go on to how you can add that directly in a little while. So that was the merchant side. On the community side, you can see we've got a nice distribution of communities, kind of heavily focused in Europe at the minute, just because of the nature of the many different countries, and also the excellent work of 21.world and 21 and those sorts of organizations that are really driving grassroots community adoption. We've got now over 400 communities, and also a backlog of about 50 or so that we need to verify. So, end of this year, we'll be touching 500 communities around the world. It's messed up, that graphic there, but you can see there's this kind of Cambrian explosion of communities going back to Arnhem Bitcoin City. I think 2013 they set off, and now we're seeing an absolute explosion of actual grassroots circular economies. So I'm not just talking meetups, I'm talking communities where the sats are staying within that community. So Bitcoin Berlin down in El Salvador is a great example of that. Didn't exist a year ago. I think they've got something like 200 merchants now accepting Bitcoin, and you can live off Bitcoin in that environment. Similarly with merchants, it's super simple to add your community to BTC Map. Just fill out the form, and then me or one of the other core team will verify that. Make sure you're not doing any shitcoining. Make sure you've got community tooling, whether that's a Signal group or a Telegram group. Make sure you're real, and then we'll add you to the map thereafter. And it's really good for discovery as well. So if you're traveling around, and of course you want to find merchants to spend sats at, but you also maybe want to find a local meetup or a local community if you're traveling to meet up with fellow plebs wherever you may be. Okay, so let's get into some of the meat now in terms of how you actually become a shadowy super tagger. So as I mentioned earlier, we use OpenStreetMaps as our geographic database, if you like, and that's kind of the Wikipedia for maps. And anyone can edit that. So I wouldn't quite say it's permissionless in the Bitcoin sense, but so you create yourself an account, and as long as you're not doing like dumb things, then you can add and maintain maps. If you start spamming the maps, or you start removing locations or adding silly locations without any kind of evidence that they exist, then of course we keep an eye on that. But there are, I don't know, tens of thousands of OpenStreetMap contributors around the world that care about their local environment. And so, in fact, we had some issues when we first started adding Bitcoin locations to the map and tagging them with Lightning tags, for example, which is something that we help invent. And they're like, oh no, the crypto bros are here, and they're shitting all over our maps. And so we had some pretty feisty conversations with local moderators and some of the central OpenStreetMap team, and we had to kind of explain to them that we were actually cleaning up the map because there were lots of historical bad data on the map that we've gone through and cleansed of the past 2 years now. So they were initially skeptical, but we earned their trust through proof of work. So we literally went through and cleansed 10,000 locations, and then we earn their trust doing that. Onto the details then. So it's very simple. All you need to do is, once you have an OSM account, is if you just add this tag here, this currency XBT tag, within 10 minutes roughly, you will appear on BTC Map. So that doesn't get verified, it doesn't get validated instantly, but if that turns out to be poor data, it will be removed, because we have people going to those locations and verifying those locations. So it's kind of like a rough consensus type of situation. It will tend to be inaccurate over time, the more and more people that verify that data. And why XBT? Why not BTC? That's kind of linked back into like ISO standards around currencies. And anything that's not a currency, like gold, for example, has the X to begin with in terms of the allocation. And BT, obviously, Bitcoin. So that's what we've agreed on. And then we have these additional tags here, which we invented and are now standard within the OpenStreetMap community. So that just gives people additional information. So if those tags are present on the OSM, the BTC Map apps will show those as either on-chain Lightning or contactless. You can do queries for, I just want to go and use my Bolt card. So just show me all the places that actually accept contactless payments. And we're working on some others. Like I said, there's Liquid's an interesting one now in the high base chain environment. So that's one that could come in at some point. Probably will come in at some point. And then we have additional tags around, particularly here in Prague, for example. There is the Quirko companion app, which is kind of like a self-checkout app. So that is an additional tag that we add, which is kind of like companion app required. So on the BTC Map apps, you will see a little mobile phone symbol on those locations. And that's just to give people a heads up that although you are paying natively with Bolt 11 Lightning invoices, you do need that extra step to download the Quirko app to generate those QR codes. And it's the same deal in down in South Africa with the Pick and Pay merchants. So they're the biggest supermarket chain in South Africa, and they accept Bitcoin. And again, that's through one of these companion apps. And so we give people a heads up. So all you need to do is you go into the web editor on OpenStreetMaps. If the location already exists, you just hit edit. And literally just add in those currency XBT tags, and that's it. We also have these kind of verification tags, which is when was that location last surveyed. So these are standard OSM tags, and it's the same as in the non-Bitcoin world. Is when did I last check that fire hydrant was there and working? And so we have survey date, which is actually in person, physically verified. So did I go to that coffee shop? Did I drink a coffee there? And did they accept Bitcoin? If those things are true, then you can manually edit the verification date of that location in OSM, and that will feed into BTC Map. We use those verification dates to measure the quality of communities. So if you're a community with a low verification age, average verification age, then you're a high quality community because you are keeping on top of your data, you are verifying that information is current and accurate. If you don't do that very often, and certainly don't do it within a year, we consider that to be an out-of-date merchant, and that is visible on the map. So you should expect that, after a year or so, maybe it's a 50-50 chance they still accept Bitcoin. Maybe they did it as part of an onboarding incentive, let's say. For example, the guys in the Philippines, I forget the name of the community now, but they were financially incentivizing merchants to accept Bitcoin. And so, of course, you go to a kind of I guess, a poorer merchant and say, do you want $10 to put this sign and accept Bitcoin? All you have to do is download this app. Then everyone says yes. You go back there in 6 months and they're like, what are you talking about? What is Bitcoin? And so, yeah, it's the pouch guys on Boracay. It's come back to me now. So they went through some pain and they had a very low kind of quality score on the map of late. And they've just recently, thankfully, gone through a cleansing exercise. So they went from something like, I don't know, 300 merchants that at one time were accepting a year ago. And maybe they dropped down to, say, 100 merchants, which is still very, very good. But we'd rather have 100 merchants that have been verified than 300 merchants where 50% of the time they say we don't accept Bitcoin. And so as a user of the platform, you just get really frustrated and you have a bad Bitcoin experience, rather than going to Boracay and having a great Bitcoin experience with the 100 merchants that are kind of still accepting Bitcoin and are kind of aligned philosophically rather than just because they got $10 a year ago, right? And that's pretty much it, right? So how can you get involved? People often want to know, how can I help Bitcoin? Because once you get into Bitcoin, you become obsessed with Bitcoin and you want to know how you can contribute. And not everyone is a coder. So rather than become a shadowy super coder, you can become a shadowy super tagger. So with very minimal like IT literacy, IT skills, you can get involved. And so you can become part of the core team. We have a backlog of tickets that get opened up when people just put a verification request in, or maybe they fill a new form in with all of the details of a merchant. So you can pick these up and you can help us verify these. And every merchant that gets added by the new form, we actually contact them. So we will check them online. We will either call them or we'll drop them an email or contact them on one of their social medias. And we verify that that is legit info before we ourselves add that onto the map. And you can do that. You can do that from wherever you want in the world. And so it's a really easy way for people who want to contribute to Bitcoin to actually make a material difference in moving Bitcoin forward. Because we truly do believe that adoption, merchant adoption, spending sats, not just hodling, spending, helps move Bitcoin forward. And it's these adoption circles that are self-reinforcing. And we just have to keep reinforcing those and they will accelerate. Okay, so what can you do next? You can join or start a local community. If one doesn't exist, just start one. And maybe it's just you in a cafe or a pub or a bar, whatever, for the first month or for the second month. But just start one. You'll be surprised. There are more Bitcoiners out there that are not on Twitter arguing with each other. And if you put yourselves out there, you will be surprised at the people that start to turn up. And then you get a momentum growing. I run the Manchester meetup in the UK. And it died out and I rebooted it, and for the first time there were like 2 or 3 people. We're now up to sometimes 30, 40 people attending the Manchester event within the last year or so. So there are people that are interested out there. You just need to make it happen. Onboard merchants. So just ask cash or Bitcoin, even if especially if they don't accept Bitcoin. And the best thing to do is when they say, I don't accept Bitcoin, you say, okay, no worries then, and put the item back on the shelf and walk out the door. And find those places that do accept Bitcoin. And those places that do make the effort to go spend your sats in those merchants. We had a barber in Manchester that I onboarded a few years ago. And he was telling me stories. People are driving to his barbershop, like a 45-minute drive to have their haircuts because they could use Bitcoin. And so that's something that merchants being onboarded want to hear. If you tell them stories like this, they're like, holy shit, I want some of that additional revenue. And to begin with, the merchant doesn't have to be orange pilled. You don't have to orange pill the merchant for them to accept Bitcoin. You have to educate the merchant that there is additional footfall, additional revenue that they can get, even if they're cashing that out to fiat to begin with. That's okay. Yeah. And then they will start saying, oh, maybe I'll hold on to those sats and I'm not going to cash my fiat out. And that's how we orange pill the merchants. We don't start talking about Austrian economics, within the first 30 seconds. You're going to lose them. And yeah, just do it shamelessly. I mean, my family have kind of just got used to it now. They've become desensitized to the embarrassment of dad asking to pay in Bitcoin. You just got to do it. And yeah, just become a shadowy supertagger. You can help us. Okay, so if you want any further information, reach out to me. We've got some time for some Q&A, 10 minutes, I think. But we're on Twitter or X, whatever it's called, on BTC Map. We're on Nostr, so please hit us up there first. And then we have a Discord, which is like the community platform right now until we figure out how to do that on Nostr. But yeah, we've got a large community there, people helping people out. Oh, I've just tagged this, it's not working. You've misspelled this tag or whatever. And people are just helping each other out all the time on the Discord chat. So yeah, that was my kind of brief overview of how to become a shadowy supertagger. So does anyone have any questions, or are we done? Yeah, go ahead.
Do you know what is Querco? Because there are so many shops here in Prague tech with that. Is this like a fiat off-ramp or?
Not quite, right? So Querco has been integrated into BTC Map because they require a companion application. So it's a bit like self-checkout. So I don't know, all over the world, you'll have different apps that allow you to like order your drinks and meals at table, so not at the bar, and also and additionally to pay for those drinks. Yeah, and so that's what Querco is. They do. So if you go into a Querco store here in Prague, for example, and you say, do you accept Bitcoin? They'll say no. Because they don't even know they accept Bitcoin. Because they're just onboarded to Querco. And at the payment stage, you can either pay with fiat or you can pay with Bitcoin. So it does require you to have that companion app. But the Querco app will generate a Lightning invoice, a Bolt 11 native Lightning invoice. So that's why they're on the map. There's some places that use Binance Pay, for example, and they're like, oh, can we go on the map? And we're like, well, do you generate a native Bolt 11 invoice? And they're like, no, you have to sign up for Binance, and it's all kind of like, no, that's not Bitcoin.
How come they got so famous around here? Because every second shop is tagged with that, so they are pretty famous with distributing their, let's say, modus operandi.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't take a Bitcoin first stance, so they're just a self-checkout provider, yeah? And so they have a few Bitcoiners that work there, and they're like, let's get some Bitcoin into this thing. So they were successful in their own rights, not because of Bitcoin, but now you're getting Bitcoiners here in Prague going to Querco-powered retailers spending sats. So that's obviously additional revenue that is going into the merchants, and that's because of Querco, and that's because of Bitcoin. And they don't even know it's because of Bitcoin. It's just happening, which is beautiful. Yeah. Yep.
Just you have those communities, and they are associated by coordinates just if they are in the perimeter of the community, and then businesses are aligned with it, or how do they?
How are the merchants associated with the communities? Is that the question?
Yep.
Yeah. So it's just a perimeter. So the community, one of the definitions is the area that they kind of.
So what when the area is wrong?
We correct it. Yeah. So when you submit a community, you say where you operate. So normally it's a town, or sometimes it's a region. If it's unclear, we will verify with them exactly the bounds of their community.
Just in border regions, often it doesn't really align.
It can be whatever it wants. I mean, under the hood, it's just a GeoJSON, set of coordinates. So it can be anything we want, effectively.
So where to edit it?
So we use various tooling, open source tooling, to create those. So as part of our onboarding process, it will automatically generate the GeoJSON for, say, I don't know, Prague. And that's using a lot of the OpenStreetMap APIs to do that. But yeah, once generated, if a merchant falls within that, then it will be listed within their community. Yeah. And we can have overlapping communities. In London, there's like 3 communities that have the same GeoJSON. But they serve different parts of the Bitcoin community, and that's also fine. Yeah.
Hey Nathan, do you know if there's some project or some efforts trying to add like a search and discovery interface on top of the BTC map data? Like I'm in Prague, I want to be able to just type looking for a restaurant or looking for a gift shop accepting Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
Instead of going to the map interface and clicking one by one. So is there some efforts like that?
Yeah, so we do have search, which is okay right now. I don't think it's, world class or anything. But yeah, discoverability is something that we're working on. And I think Nostr can be a very powerful part of that, right? So, for example, you could attach your npub, your Nostr identity, to a community, should you wish. Obviously, it's always opt-in. And then you can start to think about use cases around alerts. So I'm alerted that a new merchant has just been opened within areas that I care about. Or if you choose to put your geolocation on the app, you say, I'm near a merchant that has just got an offer, perhaps. So, maybe the SatsBats guys have got an offer with that particular merchant. You're walking past it and it's like, hey, there's a 10% sats back if you go and get your coffee from this merchant, and they're like 100 meters down the road. So yeah, all of that stuff is coming. We're a very limited small team. It's open source, not for profit. So this is kind of all done as a side project until hopefully we get some more funding. Yeah. But yeah, coming soon.
Weeks.
Anyone else? We've got 1 more minute before we get kicked out. No? Okay, we'll close it there, guys. Thanks a lot.